But at the same time, you can't work in fear, right? I mean, that doesn't necessarily help either. Now, it's good to match, mesh in a little bit of fear with some of the passion, but at the same time, if you understand your audience well, and you know that certain messages resonate with that audience, then I don't think you have much to be fearful of. Now, obviously, there's going to be people that have a bad day, and they'll lash out on you. And you just have to kind of take it for what it is, right? They probably had a bad day, and then you're going to, no matter what discipline you're in, you're going to come across challenges and problems.
Hello, I'm Carrie Gard, and welcome to Tea Time with Tech Marketing Leaders. This episode is brought to you by MKG Marketing, the digital marketing agency that helps complex brands build trust with complex audiences via SEO and digital ads. We are live on LinkedIn and YouTube. If you are here, say hello. I'm hanging out in the comments. I want to know, I can't see you unless you say hello. Say something. Tell me where you're from. Tell us what's going on. What's hard for you? We're here for it. And we most importantly look forward to all of your questions, because that's the beauty of being live here on LinkedIn and YouTube, is we get to hear from you and make sure you feel like you can walk away with something. You can go do something, lean into something, and ensure your marketing is better in terms of building trust with your end user, which is the ultimate goal of all of the things in terms of how marketing should roll. So we are here for it. We look forward to hearing from you. Let's go. With me today is Yehuda Cagen, experienced and result-oriented marketer with the ability to develop, implement, and manage forward-driven marketing campaigns that drive lead gen, increase revenue, and elevate brand value. He's a dedicated marketing innovator with the experience in motivating teams to deliver a peak performance, enhance efficiency of process and spend to positively impact revenue and brand equity. The dream. You are the dream, Yehuda. We are here for it. And we're excited to dive into today's conversation around the ICP. We're going to get into what those acronyms soup means in a second. But welcome, Yehuda. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited about this discussion.
It should be good. We have a lot to dig into. Before we get there, though, I gave a brief, very high level synopsis of where you are today and what you're looking to do. But what's your story? Like, what are you doing now, and how did you get there?
So I've worked almost exclusively in B2B tech, starting in the mid 2000s with an MSP, and then I kind of worked my way towards supply chain integration software, and now I'm working for Stendio, who and they're a cybersecurity software, GRC cybersecurity software. So I've spent the majority of my career in B2B tech. It happened because I still do, and I live in Houston. And at the time, there wasn't a huge, I was really into advertising, that kind of thing. And I liked the creativity of it and the humor in and around it. The problem the challenge was for me at the time, is that there weren't a whole lot of B2C kind of opportunities here in Houston. And so my career path just, the trajectory went in the way of B2B tech, and I've been in it ever since. It's been fun.
I feel like B2B tech and cybersecurity in particular have sort of like a moat around it. Either you, trip over a rock and like skip over the moat and land in cyber, or you go after it really, really hard. It's not generally something people find themselves in. It's an interesting niche. It's an interesting industry that not many people are familiar with. So can you tell us your story in particular of how you found yourself in cyber in particular?
Sure. Well, when I worked for the MSP, we talked a lot about cybersecurity in general, right? Because as things were starting to gravitate towards the cloud, it became very apparent that cybersecurity had to be taken very seriously. And so as the cloud became more commonplace, I would give seminars and webinars in and around the subject of cloud and internet security. And I took about a 6-7 year break when I moved to supply chain integration software. And then when I was asked to join Estendio, I had a really good idea of kind of some of the implications of cybersecurity. I didn't quite have the compliance side knowledge of it, which I later learned when I came on board. But that's kind of how I stumbled into it. I knew the components of a security program, whether it is endpoint security or disaster recovery or business continuity. I would actually give, we live here in Houston, and so business continuity and disaster recovery is a really big topic down here due to the storms and hurricanes, things of that nature. So I had a familiarity with it, and so it seemed like a pretty natural fit for me. So that's kind of how I, if you will, stumbled into cybersecurity.
It's interesting because you mentioned Houston a couple times, and being in a remote world these days, location doesn't always come up that often. So, but it sounds like location for you has actually played an important role. So you've always grown up in Houston, or
I
your
grew up
work
in
moved you
Houston.
there?
No, actually, my dad's work moved us here, and so my grandparents are all born in the Milwaukee, Wisconsin area. And to the chagrin of my extended family, I'm a Houston Texans, so Astros and Rockets fans, and I have no allegiance, or little allegiance, I should say, to the Milwaukee area sports teams. So for the most part, I grew up here in Houston.
The warmer weather, I don't blame them.
It's very much warmer weather, right? There are two. They say there are two seasons here in Houston. There's hot, and then there's hell, right? So those are the two seasons here. But it's a good place. It's got it's a big city, but it's kind of small town mentality. People are very friendly here. So so I stuck around, and I'm now raising my family here.
Oh, I love that. And it sounds, when you talk about B2B and tech, Houston isn't generally a city that pops up. It's usually San Francisco, Seattle, New York. It's not Texas. It's not any cities in Texas. So I find it really fascinating that not only is Houston sort of a booming area for B2B, but in particular, cybersecurity, and the fact that you mentioned storms around that too, I think is an interesting parallel and dichotomy as well. Let's talk about
Austin has a nice. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. I want to hear. What do we got going on?
Austin has a nice tech scene now. Austin, Texas, has a pretty nice tech scene. And actually, the company I work for is based out of Virginia, and I actually work remotely. When they asked me, and this was towards the end of COVID, they asked me, "Do you think you'd be able to manage a team remotely?" And I told them, "Look, honestly, before COVID, I probably thought I could. But I couldn't give you any real answer as to whether I can actually do it. But since COVID happened and we had to go through it, so that's it. Actually, gave rise to an opportunity based out of Virginia, which was great.
Remote work. I am so excited it is here to stay. We've been remote since 2011 when we started. So we've been remote since the beginning. COVID hit and we were like, just another day at the office apart from kids and pets and all the other things under our feet.
Right.
But at the end of the day, we knew how to work remotely. And I'm so grateful that the world has caught up because it is a wonderful, there's pros and cons to both for sure. But now that we can actually play in both spaces officially, I worked on a Microsoft campaign I don't know, 2010. And it was this idea of, it was something about without windows or without walls and to be able to work from anywhere. And it was like this novel idea of working from a park. What are you talking about? And it's here. It's finally here. And I'm grateful it's here for so many people who have made work more accessible. And flexible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've spoken to a few people who actually are being mandated to go back in the office, and my thought is, what are you on an assembly line? Like what like why is it so necessary? But I know that different industries require different things, and I think also it has to do with the accountability that is set by management, as well, of course, as the accountability of the individuals, right? So that's a huge component of it. But if you have a culture, if you built a culture in your organization around accountability, and you hire people who are accountable, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't allow them to work remotely.
Yehuda, we could have a whole conversation just about
Yeah.
that. We totally could, because I do think that there's a ton to unpack in terms of how you set it up for success. You can't just like take what you did
Mm-hmm.
in person and then move it to
Mm-mm.
remote, or vice versa. I don't recommend either of those
That's
things.
Yep. Yeah, I
I
agreed. Part that we'll leave that for part two.
Part two. I am here for it. Well, let's switch gears or get back on
Okay.
track or both. And I'd love to know, for where you are now. You're in Houston. You're working for this company
Mm-hmm.
who's in Virginia.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But what's hard for you right now? What's the challenge you're currently facing? We got going on over there.
Well, I mean, I think the one challenge that you face ultimately, particularly when you're in cybersecurity, is understanding your audience, right? I mean, and the audience in cybersecurity, I mean, people have become a lot more skeptical, especially as the marketplace becomes cluttered with messages and promises. But I think you can take that to the nth degree in the cybersecurity market. Those people, cybersecurity experts are, they're trained to be skeptical. So if you can't bring your A game and your A message to that cybersecurity buyer or influencer, you're going to be in trouble.
I feel like it's gotten worse in the sense that they're always skeptics, but they're
Mm-hmm.
even more skeptical as it relates to marketing and sales in particular. Is that fair?
Yes. I like I said, I think they have to be, you know, for the work that they do, they have to be very skeptical. And I think anything that they bring into their environment have it has to kind of it has to be seen with a very skeptical eye, because you know one misstep or a series of can lead to another series of missteps, which can have catastrophic consequences, unfortunately. And so, but I agree, right? So anything that they bring into their inner influence, and that includes any tools or platforms or services that they take advantage of, they're going to be skeptical of it right off the bat. And so you really have to build that trust. You discussed building trust as part of the process, and I think that is key in any market, but in particular to cybersecurity.
I'm going to get on my pedestal, high horse, whatever you want to call it, for a hot second to sort of lay the stage for this, because I think this is such an important topic and something I'm pushing pretty hard, to the point where I actually was on another podcast, and then he quoted me directly, and I was like, wow, that sounds really harsh when you like isolate it as a thing. But I think this is really true, especially for this audience of, as marketing and sales, we are a collective who do outreach to have people buy our products and end up using them at the core of what it is that we do, have used scaling tactics in a way that have burned bridges and made it worse. Took a skeptical audience and made them extra skeptical.
Yes, and like they say, it takes a long time to build trust, and it doesn't take much at all to lose that trust. So, yeah, you got to be really careful.
Yeah, I don't think it took us long. We're there.
Yeah, but exactly. But at the same time, you can't work in fear, right? I mean, that doesn't necessarily help either. Now, it's good to match, mesh in a little bit of fear with some of the passion. But at the same time, if you understand your audience well, and you know that certain messages resonate with that audience, then I don't think you have much to be fearful of. Now, obviously, there's going to be people that have a bad day, and they'll lash out on you, and you just have to kind of take it for what it is, right? They probably had a bad day, and then you're going to, no matter what discipline you're in, you're going to come across challenges and problems and difficult people, or people reacting, negatively to what you're doing. And so it's not just a matter of avoiding those challenges, it's how you deal with those challenges. And so you deal with it the way you would any other challenge, right? If someone gets upset, then you own it and you move on.
And if it's only one or two people, like if it's only a handful of people,
yeah,
you take that with a grain, take that as you will. Good to learn from it, but also like you don't need to react to it versus an upheaval. We are not Netflix trying to, break into two parts and DVD versus
that's right.
Here.
That's right.
I think this is really important. Let's talk about the ICP because that's really what we're here to talk about today. And let's start from the beginning of ideal customer profile. We love talking in acronyms for marketers. We make them up all day. Ideal customer profile. Let's break this into two parts. You have your ideal customer and then what a profile is. So let's talk about what it means to be an ideal customer. What is an ideal customer and how do you know that you're talking to an ideal customer?
Well, I mean, the ideal customer profile, and I see it as the cornerstone of any marketing program, right? Or any marketing campaign or plan. It's essentially understanding a specific segment within the market, and your message is basically based on that segment, and you're essentially telling your ideal client profile, or your ideal client, I should say, that you have a specific widget or platform or service that was created specifically just for you, right? And so that's why it's so critical. And I mean, I think we could take lessons from other industries, right? So we're typically B2B, tech, SaaS, cybersecurity, but let's just, I like to kind of blend a lot of what I do in B2B with some of other experiences and some of what I've read in terms of good marketing and companies that have really perfected the identification and the messaging through their ICP. So in the case of a good B2C example would be, here's kind of what I mean by the cornerstone of a marketing program. Imagine if Harley Davidson didn't have an ICP, right? And they'd say, we just want to build a good mode of transportation for everyone. I mean, they wouldn't look anything near what they look like now. I mean, they kind of honed in on a segment of the population that was very passionate about the open road, very passionate about, kind of the way the machine has to work and how they go about it. Not an A to B. It's not just getting from A to B, right? I mean, if they just marketed to the largest segment of the population, they would be a totally different company. So that's what I'm saying. Like, it has to be identifying that profile, or that ideal client has to be the cornerstone of your marketing plan. Because if you don't, it's, you just go into, you keep, there's a lot of self-doubt. You'll keep going in many different directions. And then back to what we spoke about earlier, you might just tick off some people because it just doesn't resonate with them.
Yes, to the ticking off piece for sure. Let's talk about the brand, because I love,
excuse me.
I was holding my tongue because I had like a million brands on, that I was ready to like launch into space of, who identified their ideal customer and like really, leaned into that. But the fact that you came up with Harley Davidson is just so magical because one, it's not one that came to mind for me. And two, when you think of Harley Davidson, you think of I have to imagine the rest of the audience did what I did, where they painted a picture of the person. Who's probably a bit rough and tumble, got a beard, bandana on his head, some awesome leather jacket, maybe with an eagle on the back. And like, they are riding this hog down the highway and cruising like it's all they want to do all day, every day. To your point, there's no destination. They just love being
Yeah.
on this bike, right? Like we all painted that a similar picture. And
Yes.
like,
Yeah, yeah. You don't drive around in a Harley Davidson if you just want to, skip traffic in Amsterdam or something, right? It just doesn't. It's just not the persona. It's not the
no,
ICP.
no, it's the New Hampshire folks of live free or die, right? Like that is,
That's it.
and in a good, like in the best way. Like
Yeah.
in the best way.
And
Oh,
they can tell you what it is, right? Every
yeah.
one of their customers, right? Their clients.
I have to believe, and I don't know the story of
Mhm.
Harley Davidson. Now I want to go on this fact finding mission because I can't help myself, and I will, and it'll be magical. But I have to believe that it started with the person who built the company, where they probably had a similar persona themselves, where they saw themselves wanting to live this life and they couldn't find it. And so they went out and built it.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I said before, right? It's finding that segment of the market, that in you telling that individual this service platform widget, bike, it was created specifically for you, right? This is who we created for, and this is why. And again, you just lean into their sensibilities, their philosophical viewpoints. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of talk these days around creating demand. Kind of hard to create demand without a huge budget. But you can certainly channel that demand and kind of, like I said, lean into their sensibilities and what they're into and what they believe.
I think there's this element that's been lost in the world, and I'd love your opinion on this, Yehuda, because you've worked with some smaller
Sure.
companies and startups as well as
Mhm.
bigger companies. Is that, and I love using the Harley Davidson scenario because I feel like when you build a thing, you start to think about all the possibilities of what this thing could do, and you lose sight of why you built the thing to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like going back to the founder is a lost piece in that, a lost piece to that puzzle of like, well, why did you build it? What did you
Yeah.
want from this?
Yes.
Why does this thing exist? Right? You're the
Yep.
ICP once. Tell me more.
That's right. That's right. Well, I mean, also bear in mind, I mean, the ICP is not something that you just set on the front end of your marketing plan and that just stays static for perpetuity. I mean, this is something that's all, understand that it has to be realistic, right? You can't just say, well, I'm going to start trying to, let's say, pry customers away from the Harley Davidson. I'm going to create my own bike, right? Be realistic, obviously, and then understand that it can be fluid, right? It can be, and at times it needs to be fluid because there's going to be a little bit of trial and error, though. Again, you should probably do a little bit more market research beforehand. But you have to understand kind of where your customers are, and sometimes you'll learn things along the way that you didn't realize, and that might open the door for other customers or other segments of the population as well. Like look at Arm & Hammer baking soda, right? Now they found a niche in keeping their freezers fresh. Like who would have thought,
Right?
right? I mean, so it's now become baking soda has become a freshness. It's kind of like it's competing with Febreze or Febreze competing with it, right? In terms of keeping things fresh. So you have to be open to you can't just be very static. You have to be open to that the idea that the ICP can be fluid, but stick with it and then give yourself, I don't know, 12, 18 months, whatever you think is required, and then build off of that, right?
Oh,
And
I think the pivoting is
set goals for
fascinating.
yourself and kind of how long you want to stick with this and how long you plan to stick with it, and then realize that, and then reassess and see whether you've really hit the mark, to what extent, and whether you have to pivot a little bit. But yeah, I think there is something about being the ICP and representing the ICP and kind of what you would like to see in the market, and there's definitely some validity in that. But you also have to, there are some people, like for example, I mentioned that I'm a Houston Astros fan, or Houston, Texans fan, and there are certain things that I believe that the Astros should do, and that kind of thing. But there's differing in opinion on that, and so you have to, even though you're a founder and you're very passionate about it, and you understand at least what you feel is the target persona, you have to also be open to different perspectives, or at least varying perspectives at the same time, without again going too far out of the confines of the ICP.
Let's talk about, so I mentioned one way to sort of identify your ICP about going back to the founder, depending on how big or small you are. But let's talk about how you really uncover. You mentioned so many great examples of how things might accidentally pivot, like Arm & Hammer. It is a wonderful air fresher for your freezer. And but they didn't know that. That's not why they created it, right? So in thinking about the ICP and the problems we solve for cybersecurity in particular, where do we start in really knowing who we should be marketing to?
Well, I think when you build so when you're building the company, or at least you're building the marketing program or sales and marketing program, you have to understand, well, who is this for, right? I mean, everyone has to understand who their audience is, right? They say that if you try to market to everyone, you're marketing to no one. So you really have to understand, and you can't. When you look at this and you do this analysis, you obviously can't be in a vacuum. You have to recognize if there are others in this space, and if there are others in this space, and particularly if they're established in this space, you gotta that goes back to being realistic, right? If you want to, going back to, let's say, the Harley Davidson analogy, it's going to be it'll be really tough to supplant Harley Davidson, right? So you say, well, then what other segment? We sell motorbikes. What other segments could it be? Maybe it's off-road, right? Maybe it's just trying to weave in and out of high traffic and high congested traffic areas. Whatever it is that you have to.
Sure.
Yeah, you're trying to find the area or the segment of the population or the segment of the target audience that makes most sense to you and to what your platform strengths are. Presuming that you've already built the platform or you've built
you have a thing, you're ready to market it.
Right. Sorry?
You have a thing, you're ready to market it. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So you already have it in place, then say, okay, well, where would I resonate most within this market? And obviously you can't be, 5 people unless you sell very high ticket items, right? It has to be a nice segment of the population, but also it has to kind of serve a need that is unserved. Otherwise you get into high commoditization, and you don't want to be in that place because it's hard to compete. It's a race to the bottom if you want to just, be the Walmart or whatever your niche is, right? Because there's always going to be another knockoff, another Walmart, someone in China building something else that's a lot cheaper. So it's just finding that area and then building on it. What I like to do particular, and this is kind of speaks maybe more of an account-based marketing as opposed to ICP in particular, but it does introduce us to another acronym, so that's fun. ABM, right? You kind of start with like a dream. Let's say sales rep, because typically the way I've seen it, sales reps have always kind of sometimes predated marketing teams. I don't know why that is. Maybe they just, typically a lot of these cybersecurity or any kind of SaaS programs
are built by early hire. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So they're an early hire. So maybe you just take a dream 200 or 100, 200, and then go deep and wide on those that list in that particular segment, so you can again truly understand what their needs and wants are, and then you build off of that. So that that's what I would recommend as a good start. And just as important, actually, when you're talking about ICP, you also have to know which segment of the market not to market to, and will not appreciate what you have to offer. I mean, they may appreciate it, but if you get to a point where it is you've kind of charted into very cluttered waters, if you will, or very highly saturated markets, then again you run the risk of becoming either commoditized or becoming maybe perhaps a company or an organization or a vision that doesn't align with a certain audience, and then you end up wasting sales reps time. You might even create a false sense of success. Oh, look, all these opportunities, but it can ultimately lead to, again, wasting sales reps time, poor sales forecasting, and then, overall bad morale, because then you start questioning everything. So just as important of understanding who you are segmenting, you also want to understand and appreciate who you're not targeting to.
Let's double click on that for a second, because there's there's a couple elements to that. It used to be a numbers game, right? Where it was like, we need CISOs. Let's market to all of them. And then we'll whittle it down, and we'll get a handful of the ones who are the right ones. Right. And to your point, account-based marketing has absolutely flipped that on its head. It's like, well, let's stop trying to talk to everyone, and let's talk to the people who are really going to need this thing. There's a couple challenges with that, though. There's challenges with both. One is you burn a lot of bridges on the one side with just going after every CISO, and then whittling it down to this will take a lot of time. You got to muddle through a lot of crap. You definitely burn a lot of money that way. Yeah. On the flip side, from the ABM perspective, you are honing on your exact audience. What if it's very small? Like, there's pros and cons that, right? Like, you're talking to the exact right people. But what if they're not all ready to buy right now? Like,
I mean, statistics suggest that most accounts or most organizations are not ready to buy, right? Between 3 to 10% of the time, depending on, the sales cycles, right? So that's when you have to start, building, and we're going a little bit out of ICP, but I mean, it's sometimes, you have to recognize if it's a market of 150, accounts or companies, it better be a high ticket item. And again, it has to align with sales goals and sales revenue goals and growth goals and everything like that. So you have to recognize on the front end, if you bake in at least like some conservative close ratios, right, and say, like, we can get 10% of the market, or we can close 30% of those that we speak to, right? And then you kind of work backwards from there, but you have to obviously be cognizant of it. And you said something interesting in terms of every CISO, right? So you have to also recognize, who is the economic buyer, right? Who's signing off the deal, and who are the champions of the deal? Who is either going to drive it, or who is going to ultimately be the champion of whatever service or software or widget that you sell, right? So, again, everyone likes to go straight to the CISO or straight to the CFO, right? Because they're economic buyer. But it's really critical to also, not just segment the accounts or the companies, but also identify the champion, not championship. See, I'm talking about the Astros and I'm thinking championship, but you have to identify the champion and also create messaging that appeals to those individuals that represent your ICP. Because if you don't identify the champion, well, then you can't even make it to the CISO or the CFO or you're not going to make the short list to the economic buyer.
It's true, and it makes it does broaden your audience too. Like, if you're talking about, we're getting into account-based marketing here, but I think it's really critical when you're talking about your ideal customer profile. It's not necessarily when you're talking. I know when we say ICP, it sounds singular, right? Ideal customer singular profile, but at the end of the day, to what you're saying, Yehuda, it's actually profiles, and that each part of the organization is part of the buying process. It's no longer a single buyer. I don't know if that ever was, but it definitely is not now. It's a committee, which is harder, exponentially harder. Yeah. And so really thinking about the different folks that touch this product, whether it's deeply, like a practitioner versus a CFO who's just going to sign on the dotted line, you still need to think through the messaging of that. And man, try to negotiate with CFOs, man.
It's not easy. But you have to, like, not every persona. Let's say you have the champion. You have that champion might be, let's say in our space, might be a GRC, the head of compliance, head of security, head of IT in some cases, and maybe the CISO or the CFO in some instances would be the economic buyer, and then there's the end user, right? And then there's everyone else. So not every persona is created equal, right? You got to focus on those championship. The champion. Here I go again. You got to focus on the champion, right? The champion is we're getting into baseball season, but you got to focus on the champion, and just know what everyone else's role is, right? I mean, you can't ignore everyone else, but it's not the same message to everyone else. So if you have the champion, let's say, then who else is there, right? You have to know what their roles and capabilities are. And typically, if they're not the champion and they're in the decision-making process, then their role often and their capability is often what is maybe how to kill the deal. Like, their role is almost like a sounding board and saying, tell me why this is a bad idea so that I don't take this risk and with this software, this platform, right? Yeah. So if you know who the champion is and then who are the potential deal killers, then you've got to arm the champion with those, ways to circumvent those objections, right? So again, different messaging, different materials, different approaches to different constituents within the organization.
Okay, so here's what I heard you say. We have the champion, which is the ultimate person who's going to use this thing and has to figure out how to convince other people that they need it.
Yes.
You have the economic buyer who is going to sign on the dotted line and approve the thing. And then you have the naysayer, which wasn't your word, but I couldn't remember your exact word, but the person who's coming in to figure out all the reasons why this thing is probably not a good idea. And so you have these three audiences that you have to help your champion navigate through the right messaging.
Exactly it. Yeah,
that's exactly it.
And
I love
right. So you're not trying to give the same set of benefits and say, and like you're talking to the champion and you give them a set of benefits that resonate with them. You're not going to take that same set of benefits and speak to other constituents whose role is essentially to potentially kill the deal, right? You're gonna start talking about objections and why you wouldn't, and then responses for why you would, right? So
objections, man, I don't know that we talk about objections enough.
I don't think, especially in a B2B sale, there's always, because not every audience falls into the same category, right? I mean, even like if you just take it in generalities, forget about cybersecurity necessarily. C-suite, they're typically looking towards the future. They're looking, okay, new way versus old way, right? That kind of thing. Those that are maybe in the mid-level, mid-level managers, mid-level management, they want things that are easy to implement, right? They want ways to know that it actually works, right? Because they're, this is typically the champion in many cases, but not always. And so they want to make sure that, since they put, it's their job on the line in many cases. And then there's the end users, right? They're making the salami or the donuts or whatever, analogy you're trying to use, right? So for them, sometimes they may not be decision makers, but those may be
they
those
have to know how to work it,
right?
They know,
right? They have to know how to work it, because then you get into customer attrition or client attrition, and you definitely don't want that. Anyway,
I actually went to battle. No, this is important. This is critical because I actually went to battle. We were working with a company, and they wanted to keep working with us, and I was like, the only way we can keep working with you at this point is if you give us a person who can literally train up my new people, because we've had turnover and learning your product has been really tricky. So unless you can give me a person who can train them, I cannot renew with your product. Like that's an end user. And then like my end users, the people who were coming on board to use this thing, had no say in this being the thing that they were going to use. But they had to know how to use it. I think that's so important, and something we're absolutely like, once the sale happens, it's like we're good to go. And it's like in a SaaS product, you are not good to go.
No, more than anything, sales, marketing, and now CS, right? Customer success have to all kind of work in unison. And they all have to work off of each other, and they all have to feed off of each other. So again, many different constituents within the buying, the buying committee, if you will. And so you have to recognize who they are and what messages to to send to those individuals, or to present to those individuals, or to present to the champion to present to those individuals.
And I think this is really helpful because if you're narrowing it down to this helps you want to narrow it down, right? Like if you're just going after one segment and you're just going to go after all of them and blast them, that's one way to play it. Or even better, this makes a play at why account-based marketing is so critical to those higher price ticket items. Because if you really identify who is going to buy from you based off who's bought from you in the past, know who your champions are of who's pushing the product through. So for us as a marketing agency, right, it's the VP. The VP is ultimately saying, I need a good agency that's going to help my team do better and that I can get across to the CMO. Ultimately, like, they're the champion, but we got to work with their managers to make sure that they want to work with us. That, like, at the end of the day, they're the end user who's got to like us. And the CMO's got to feel like we're going to deliver on our promises, right? But it's the VP that's ultimately our champion in that, and we got to help them, feel like they're making a good decision because it's their neck on the line. And I think that's critical. And what gets lost is, like, it's not just having a champion to give them the right messaging to push this thing through. It's like they're putting themselves on the line to say, this is the product we should use, and here's why. Because if it doesn't work out or something goes horribly wrong, it's them on the line for it. And the stakes are higher than ever in security.
That's right. You have to recognize their concerns and worries, right? And then arm them, right? Particularly the champions. I mean, in talking about those messages, I remember once, I think it was the beginning of COVID. It definitely was the beginning of COVID. We ran a kind of a cold email campaign. This is back when it was in the supply chain integration software. And we didn't just target like our key ICP accounts, right? And we didn't just target different personas within the organization, but we also identified those types of companies who may be suffering as a result of the pandemic, and those who may be succeeding as a result of the pandemic. And so, I think all in all, we had like 14 different messages, right? So we have like different types of accounts, right? Different segments within the population. So in, let's say, in supply chain, you often have buyers/retailers and then suppliers/manufacturers. Then you have those within those areas who are succeeding versus those that were probably suffering as a result of like succeeding may have been, let's say, grocery or pharmaceuticals, or very, very essentials. And those who may have been suffering may have been suits, right, formal wear, right? No one was buying formal wear in the first 6 months of COVID.
No, they were
probably
not.
longer. So we identified different messaging that would where we hope would resonate with them. And I think it, like I said, 14 different messages, and yes, it takes a lot more time, or considerably more time on the front end, but it can save a lot on the back end in terms of banging your head. Why are messaging resonating? Why are sales cycles so long? Why is it taking so much time to get a return on my investment? I think if I recall correctly, that campaign netted $250,000 of closed revenue. So it's really important. It's really critical to kind of look at it and be as specific as possible. But again, you don't have to say, okay, we don't have to go that broad, right? 14 different messages, right? Because again, some individuals within your, within the corporate hierarchy, if you will, they don't really necessarily hear it. They may need to overcome objectives. So that's, that's later on in the sales cycle. But just recognize kind of who you're talking to and what resonates most with them.
Let's talk about that for a second, because it is a huge lift when you start slicing and dicing. And you're also taking a budget that you're slicing and dicing, right? So the more you divvy up these resources, the more you feel like you need. Is that true? Or because you're being so thoughtful and specific, a smaller budget can go a longer way?
I think you could be pretty creative with the budget, right? And let's take, like, for example, if you have like a LinkedIn, type of campaign, or paid LinkedIn, right? You're paying for people to get in front of people, right? So that budget can get away from you really quickly. So you want to say, maybe, all right, let's focus on the champions first, And then once we get later in the sales cycle, we can provide certain materials where that can satisfy some of the other constituents in the hiring committee. Sorry, the buying committee, right? Whereas email, like I said, I mean, there wasn't really a whole lot in terms of, I mean, there was a little bit more time, but like I said, I think it turned out to be worthwhile in terms of the time commitment. But yeah, I mean, definitely you have to recognize what you feel that you can, in terms of return on investment, whether it's a personnel investment or ad spend, hiring consultancies or hiring different coaches or whomever, right, to kind of get you on the right track. But again, understanding who you're marketing to or who you're speaking to. I don't think you can. You don't want to skimp on that. You just don't.
No, especially if it's small and like you only have so many people to talk to. So if you only so many champions, you don't want to burn those bridges. So being really intentional and understanding about what their needs are.
And ultimately, it makes it easier, right? Because you let's say I've seen a lot of like copywriters and those that much of their messaging, and they kind of get cutesy with it on their websites. There's a lot of crossing out and kind of working with the messaging, how well it works, how well it doesn't work, what is extraneous, what do we absolutely need, and that becomes so much easier when you have that. Let's say you have that, Harley Davidson person in mind, right? Because you're not going to, you might be able to weave in and out of traffic. You might be able to take it off road, but you're not talking to those people, right? You're talking to people that just want to hit the open road and, miss the days of Route 66, right? Or whatever it is, right? So, right? Think about the days. So you have a mental, and it makes that process a lot more easy.
Yeah.
Nothing's easy, but it simplifies it.
When you really can talk to people who want to live the dream of whatever it is you're promising. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I know we're using a B2C example, but I think there's so much we can learn from B2B, from B2C, of how to do a better job of storytelling, connecting with our audience, and helping them feel like there's a light at the end of the tunnel of whatever problem they have that we're there to solve.
Yeah.
How many times do we do things the hard way, not knowing that there's an easier way and a tool out there, right? Like, so many things. Be honest, Yehuda, how many tabs do you have open right now of Excel sheets and data?
Too many. Like I actually have like not just tabs on my Chrome, but like different sets of tabs based on whatever I'm working on, right? So there's ICP tabs, right? So that includes notes on ICP, notes ICP documentation, right? And then there's competitor tabs, right? We're looking at the competitors, and there's all these different. And there's paid ads and organic, right? So that I can go straight to it. So yes, too many tabs for sure.
We have to believe that there's maybe a better way, but maybe there's not, and that's just the world we're in right now. But that's how our audience feels, right? Like, so painting that picture for them of less tabs and less headaches and less is, what the B2C community definitely has unlocked, and we're behind, but we're catching up.
Ultimately, you're just talking. Yeah, exactly. Ultimately, you're talking to people still. I mean, I don't think AI is advanced enough for people to make those. To have AI make those decisions for you, though we might get there, but at the same time, you gotta be able to train the AI. But anyway, when it comes down to it, I think a mistake that some B2B marketers might make is they ultimately, they're saying, well, that's better for B2C, right? And that's better for this. But a lot of the B2C practices gave rise to some of the B2B marketing practices, and what happened is we became maybe that's an instance where we became too focused on, well, I'm B2B, so therefore I have to speak in a manner that has acronyms and jargon and everything like that. And that's where and it just, that doesn't work either, right? So just because one's B2C and one's B2B, you're ultimately talking to humans that are making these decisions, and you have to again lean into those them and their sensibilities and their philosophical viewpoints and everything that matters to them.
So much, yes. That's what I heard you say in a recap,
Mm-hmm.
and then giving you a chance to double down, correct me if I'm wrong, or say something that maybe I missed. But really, what I'm hearing you say is when you're trying to identify your ideal customer, start very high level. What are the accounts that are going to make the most sense of who's buying your product? And you can look at your existing customers. You can go back to the founder to understand what it was they were trying to do, but really understanding, like, from a B2B perspective, who are the accounts, and then from there identifying your champion, who is going to ultimately be able to make the decision on this thing, knowing that they're going to need a committee around them, but like who's going to be the voice inside the company to say, this is the product for me and here is why. And then from there, identifying your end users who you're going to need to make friends with because they need to love this thing once they're making it happen, to the C-suite who has to sign off, and whether that's both the CISO and the CFO, to the naysayers who are going to come in and poke those holes and poke the bear and say, do we really though? But do we? And really dialing in your messaging for all those audiences, but starting from the top, from those accounts, and then digging into your champion, and then beyond in terms of who your ideal customer profiles are. Did I miss anything there, Yehuda? Anything you want to double down on? Help us. You're muted. Unmute yourself. Let's go. You're muted. You're muted.
Sorry.
There we go. It's all good.
I think you got it right. And the only thing that I would add to that is you got to arm your champion, right, with the right materials, with the right objection handling. Make sure that you make them the hero, right? That's critical. That's a critical component. You can't just recognize what those others are, that there are other constituents in the buying committee, but you have to arm them as well. So I think that's something that should be noted. And as well, when you're building that ICP, you have to be you have to recognize the competition, right? Again, you're not working in a vacuum. And if they've got strangleholds on it, then you got to find a way. Either you can try to reposition the competition. So I'll show you an example of that. A repositioning of the competition would be, again, B2C, but I'll give another B2B one. 7-Up became the Uncola, whatever that means, right? But it was successful, right? But it was successful because people that don't like maybe the heaviness of cola, it's a little lighter, right? It's so that's 7-Up. And then go back to one of the key kind of cloud companies, one of the original Salesforce.com. They used to have a software with an X through it. We're the unsoftware company because you don't need to install software. You don't need to have experts that understand how to install and implement the software. It's very intuitive. It's hosted in the cloud, right? So you can also reposition the competition. But the thing I would add is that you have to make sure to take understand the competitive landscape as well as you're finding your ICP and positioning your company within that ICP. And nothing else should matter after you've done that.
Those 3 things. Yeah. I love that I think that's a wonderful triangulation of really understanding what your customer's up against. You need the competitive landscape. You need to understand the negative space in which you play, and you need to understand what problems you solve for your customer, and then arming that champion to bring that all into the company. Yeah. Messaging is.
You got it.
Is key. Your differentiation is key. It's so hard. We are not trying to show up and say, this is easy and you got this. We are here to say we are here to help. So, Yehuda, if people want to understand more and they have questions and they want to say, yes, I want to do this, tell me more, where can they find you to do that?
Well, they can find me on LinkedIn. It's LinkedIn. They can find me on LinkedIn. I also work for Estendio right now. So they can find me through Estendio at YCAGEN at Estendio, SOSTENDIO.com. But LinkedIn is if it's just generic types of questions, then feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn. And I'd be happy to provide any guidance that I could. I really enjoy this conversation, and I enjoy doing this kind of thing and talking marketing. Believe it or not.
Absolutely. That's what we're here for. Yes, yes. We need to, it's one of the things that I really loved about the cybersecurity community in particular
Hmm.
is that we are all in this together from a marketing standpoint. We're all
Yes.
trying to figure it out. We're all trying to learn together. And
Yeah.
there is no secret sauce or I'm afraid to
Yes.
give things away. It's here it is. Let me know
No,
how I
here
can
it is.
help.
Exactly. And again, if you're talking to cybersecurity above everything else, if you know your ICP, you know that you cannot BS them. You cannot fluff your way into a conversation, right?
It's
Be
true.
real with them. You have to be real with them.
Be
Absolutely. I
human.
mean, that real, human, genuine, truthful, right? Because there's no other way to build trust, particularly with them, but in general, of course, as well, right? People are too skeptical these days.
Yeah, the truth thing. We could unpack that all day long. Well, Yehuda, before we close out, thank you for letting
Hmm.
people know where to find you. But you're more than a marketer. You too are a human. And I love to know for 2024, we're still in the first half of the year, it's still early enough. COVID we've figured out how to live with it, but we are through the worst of it. And now we're on the horizon. So, what are you most looking forward to in the year to come?
Hmm. Um, are you saying beyond marketing or
Yeah,
are
in
you
life.
live? Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, on it. Sorry.
yeah, in life.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's we talked a little bit about some of the positive outcomes of COVID and working remotely and Zoom and things like that. And I think one of the things that I really like about kind of what you've done and reached out to me, and like you said, everyone kind of helping out each other. I'm looking forward to kind of continuing conversations, not necessarily just with like-minded individuals, though that is a good marketing approach, but even those that may not agree with you. I think sometimes some of the negative ramifications of remote and remote working or remote communication is that you don't get really to kind of see different perspectives, particularly with social media, with the algorithms to keep you on there,
Hmm.
things polarized.
It's
So
true.
I'm looking forward to um, ways to connect with other people, whether or not they agree with me and how things are going, and getting other perspectives. I mean, that is something. I mean, beyond sports, beyond watching the rest of Curb Your Enthusiasm in the last season, those are a few things. But just as a general rule, I'm really looking forward. I think it's really critical, and particularly as we kind of, so to speak, hide behind screens, right? And
Hmm.
and we can feel like we have a little bit of bravado, and we can kind of dig our heels in. Again, that can be good for marketing, but beyond that, and on a human level, and you mentioned a human level, I think we have to sometimes understand the diversity of thoughts, right? And what people coming from different perspectives, and understand where they're coming from, because I think when you stop having that conversation, everyone's going to be tribal anyway, right? But if you can get those tribes to kind of understand where the other is coming from, I'm looking forward to a year that people finally get to understand, and you come to understand each other, as opposed to just digging their heels in and feeling that their way is the best, right? That's kind of what I'm looking forward to. Again, beyond my sports teams, Kirby enthusiasm, all those cool things, and everything with regard to my family. I'm looking forward to good, happy, healthy, successful 2024. But I would like to see a little bit more of that, to be honest.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Less polarization and more seeking to understand.
Absolutely.
Yes, I am so here for that. If you are going to be at Cybersecurity Marketing Con, I will be there in person. And if you are there, Yehuda, I would love to have some more in-person conversations, unpack that. And if you're going to be there in person, those who are listening, come find me. If you want to have honest conversations like Yehuda's talking about, I am here for it. Yes, that. And having them in person, I think, just really opens up the space to not
Hmm.
hide behind those screens, to not
Yep.
hide behind texting and words,
Hmm.
but to actually like really sit with a human and unpack
Yes.
unpack it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Ah,
Exactly. And
I
help each
love
other
that.
out. Yeah.
Help each other out. We're all in this same LinkedIn cybersecurity B2B marketing space together, and the only way out is to build each other up. Yes to
Yes.
that.
Yes. That's, absolutely. I'm on board.
I love it. I love it. Well, we are going to have a part two because there's definitely some topics here that we have left unfinished, and I recognize that. But thank you all for
Can't
hanging
wait.
in there with us. Yehuda, I'm so grateful for this conversation.
Thank
Thank
you.
you
Thank you.
so
Thank you for
much.
inviting me. This was a lot of fun.
This episode was brought to you by MKG Marketing, the digital marketing agency that helps complex brands build trust with complex audiences via SEO and digital ads. Complex brands like Extra Hop Networks, a cybersecurity marketing company, who MKG went on a 7-year journey that culminated in a $900 million exit in Bain Capital and Crosspoint Ventures. It's hosted by me, Carrie Gard, CEO of MKG Marketing. And if you're a B2B digital marketing leader in tech and you'd like to be a guest to unpack great topics like we had today, I would love to have you. Come find me. Let's hang out. Yehuda, thank you again.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.